Hello and welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Shout About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you to everyone who has subscribed already. I cannot run this channel without you. Make sure you switch on the notification bells because that helps me push out into the algorithm a bit more, and of course it will notify you when I am releasing another video, because I know a lot of you are not seeing when my videos are up at the moment. Now today we're taking a break from Doctor Who Sunday because I want to take a moment to talk about the importance of being Ncuti Gatwa, or in this case, the importance of being earnest. Don't worry, it will be back next week with the talents of Weng Chiang. I did say to you that once I had actually seen the importance of being earnest, that I would release a video. I'm going to talk about the show itself very briefly. Obviously, the sole purpose of me going to see this was because of Ncuti himself. The Importance of Being Earnest is written by Oscar Wilde. It's about a young man named Ernest and his friend Algernon, played by Ncuti. He does not know, this is Ernest by the way, what his heritage actually is. Ernest is in love with Gwendolen. He cannot marry her because of that. He also has a ward named Cecily who lives in the country, but she knows him as Jack. He told her that his brother's name was Ernest and he lives in the city and he goes to visit her. He decides to give his address to Gwendolen in the country, and Algernon overhears it, takes note of the address, and turns up in the country the following day posing as Ernest. This leads to a flurry of confusion and shenanigans, and it eventually leads to the discovery of Ernest's parentage. So they kept the show within the time period that it was originally set in. However, they did decide to add modern themes to it. Now, because of that, it actually took away from the nature and some of the hilarity of the show a little bit. Now, one of these themes that they actually did was change the status of the characters, so to speak. So back then in the time period, black people within the country of England would have been at most middle class, and then obviously lower in status. It would have been very, very rare to have seen upper class. So they did that. They made black people upper class. However, I don't actually feel like this show was going to actually keep a lot of its historical accuracy, so to speak, other than the actual period of the clothing that it was supposed to be in. Now, the main modern twist was that they did actually include LGBTQ themes. What a big surprise. It kind of dampened the show a little bit. If you've ever read the play of The Importance of Being Earnest, you would know that none of the script is actually suggested with LGBTQ themes. It doesn't really appear. This was all added in by the director and by the actors, and it takes away from it, in my honest opinion. They obviously could not really add anything to the script without taking away from the actual integrity of it, because all the characters are straight. But they obviously took opportunities to suggest that perhaps might be not the case in this thing. They might actually be a little bit on the queer or the gay or the lesbian side. Are you surprised? No, I really wasn't. It seems to be a thing nowadays to take historical plays and add things that would never have been seen back then. But it was a modern take. Now, they could have actually been playing into the rumour that Oscar Wilde himself may have actually been gay. As far as I'm aware, that was never proven, but it was often spoken about and still is often spoken about today. The opening of this show was absolutely redonkulous. So that lovely pink extravagant dress that we saw Ncuti in the promotional press footage around the piano was actually the opening of the show, and basically it was, from what I could gather, a dream sequence that Algernon is having about playing the piano and performing to an audience. However, they took the opportunity to dress him in this ridiculous costume. I think what this was, it was a bit of a stunt move because he was the star name of the show, and that's why they did that. However, I don't think the ridiculous costume bothered him all that much. He just gets on with it. And to be honest, I don't think he really cares about how he is dressed, because you've seen how he looks at other events that are not actually associated with him playing a character. I actually took my dad to see this with me, and my dad just laughed at him because he looked absolutely ridiculous in pink. Well, actually, no, pink really suits Ncuti, actually, but he looked ridiculous in that dress. It actually made me think, when my dad laughed at Ncuti looking like that, of my friend and what he had once said. I have a friend, he is very autistic, and he sees things only in black and white. There's actually no grey area with him, men are men, women are women. He does understand trans and that some people are trans, but you're still a man or you're still a woman at the end of the day. But he does respect that in that respect. He can actually take a joke really well, and he's actually very good at making a joke. There was one day when we were talking about skirts in something that we were actually doing, and someone said to him that he should actually try on the skirt that was being shown around, because they were asking us to try on the skirt. And so he turned around and he said, "Don't be ridiculous. I would be the laughing stock." My dad laughing at Ncuti for wearing that costume just confirmed that. Now, my dad is obviously from a much older generation and very set in his ways, so I'm not surprised by his reaction at all. Other than that, they actually kept the script pretty much the same. They didn't really change any of the wording. Of course, I wasn't following along with the script, but from my memory, having read it years ago, it's not changed all that much. The staging of it was very good. The costumes were very pretty. The sets were lovely. The lighting was absolutely fantastic. The music was great, except I didn't like the adding in of the modern day pop songs. That wasn't really needed. The comedic timing was fantastic. So there were great things about it and there were really bad things about it. And I think the bad things about it tend to be more associated with the, modern day stuff, which wasn't really needed in this type of show, but they went for it. So it did dampen it a little bit. But other than that, everything else was great. Now, the reason why I went to see this was because a lot of people have said that they don't like Ncuti as an actor in Doctor Who, and I myself have been very critical of his performances in Doctor Who, and I have since called a miscast. I gave him lots of chances and he just did not meet the bar. I wasn't a savage. I was as critical as I could be, with being as reasonable as I possibly could. When I found out that he was going to be cast in this National Theatre production, I thought this would actually be a real test. National Theatre here in the UK is one of the highest caliber performance places to be for an actor. It's very difficult to get in, but once you're in, and you're more likely to be cast. So yes, it is a bit elitist, and it's more of a case of like, who do you know and how can we not have you when we've worked with you before, that type of thing. I have experienced that in other things that I have done, and it's very much a case of that with the National Theatre as well. Now, Ncuti was up against some very well established actors in this, so this was going to be a big competition for him and for me to see how he would hold up against them. Now, I don't like comparing actors, but when there are other big talents on the stage, and by big talents, of course, I'm talking about actors like Julian Bleach, who we obviously know played Davros in Doctor Who, and I saw Julian Bleach in Oliver years ago on the stage. We also have Richard Cant, who was Brian Cant's son. He was a TV presenter, and he was also in Doctor Who as Malcolm Wainwright in Blink, but he has also done a lot of National Theatre. So he's very well established in that sense. And we also have Sharon D. Clark, who really dominated the stage. You could tell by the way that she was supporting her voice, that she was probably projecting a lot more, even with her microphone on. She probably didn't even need to be mic'd. In actual fact, a lot of the actors generally don't need to be mic'd. They do it differently nowadays for some reason. And of course, Sharon has also been in Doctor Who as well as Ryan's Nan, and the young actors in it were also absolutely fantastic. My biggest question, really overall about Ncuti was, would he actually be better off working in stage shows where he has more time to work on the character than on TV when you have less time to work on the character? Some actors are very much suited to working on the stage, but not actually on the TV or film, and some actors are much better on TV and film rather than being on the stage. The reason why I say that is because they're different practices and they're very different energies. And of course, some actors obviously can do both. Ideally, it would be great if all actors can actually do both, but in reality, that's not always a case. And in other reality, well, actually not the same reality, some actors prefer one or the other, and some actors don't actually care which it is that they do. I am the actor that does not care what I do, so long as I am doing what I love. So Mr. Ncuti Gatwa was better in the role of Algernon than he was in Doctor Who. So obviously you only have my word for that. It would be up to you if you would like to go and watch it and clarify and make the decision for yourself, if you can bring yourself to do that naturally, of course. So let's talk about his performance. First of all, he did not use the accent that he normally speaks with. He used an RP English accent. Yes, this is absolutely shocking. He did an upper class English accent. In Doctor Who, we quite often hear him speaking in MLE, and occasionally he does some kind of English accent, and other times he does his Scottish accent. And I often found myself wishing throughout the entire series, well, his first series anyway, haven't seen a second one yet, I often found myself wishing that he would either choose Scottish or English. And the reason why is because I actually found that with his accent, I would actually not always understand what it was that he was saying. And this was actually the first time in Modern Who for me that I would actually have to switch on the subtitles in order to understand what he was saying. I do that for classic, but that's more because of the sound is not always perfect. But in this, I was absolutely gobsmacked. I could understand every single word that he said in the show. It was clear as crystal, and I was so impressed. If he could apply that to his work on Doctor Who, then that would be absolutely fantastic. It would save me turning on the subtitles. Quite often in Doctor Who, his emotion is very much, I'm going to do this emotion and I'm going to do that emotion, and there was no real evidence of him building up or making a connection with the actual language. Now in this, he actually built it up very well. He has the right intent, he's got the right comedic timing, he's got the right energy, he's got the oomph that I quite often talked about with him. I quite often found that his doctor didn't actually give that kind of energy, and I always wanted him to give more. And quite often with the way he was talking, it also didn't actually match his body language. Now, of course, in many respects, that's also something that lies with the director. The director was clearly missing some of these points in Doctor Who. However, I think the director here actually did work on this with Ncuti. Now, with RTD, I always wondered about this after the fact when this series had aired, was that he often stated that he would rewrite the scripts based on the rushes. Now, if you don't know what the rushes are basically the raw footage that had been shot. RTD would watch the rushes and he would write based on what he had seen with Millie and Ncuti. Now, I sometimes think that in that regards, that can also affect an actor's performance, last-minute rewrites, because if they've gone away and they've learned the lines and they've thought how they're going to play it and they've asked the questions, suddenly change, and it means they then have to find a different intent behind something and work on it in a different way. They have to ask themselves different questions in the way that they build it and all of that. But if it is something that is pretty much set in stone, like the importance of being earnest, then it is actually much better and easier to build up some type of consistency and then be able to build and build and build on your character. Because when you enter rehearsals, you start out with just, the table read and then maybe go and do some blocking, which is the staging. And that's where your character work really starts building, and you keep working and working on that. And you work with the director and the vocal coaches, and these people all help you build your character. And it's not just the actor alone. However, there is consistency in this, obviously, and the only thing that maybe will actually change is the staging. And that happens from time to time. You may have to, because of the set and things like that. And even when you get it on its feet into the show, you really are still truly working on the character when you're performing to it. You know, you are adding to it still. So I don't think you're going to be surprised by what I'm about to say. I went into this with an open mind, as you know, as much as I possibly could. So in that way, it wouldn't actually be hampered, and I would just sit down and watch it in order to make a very clear judgment. I actually think, in my personal opinion, that Ncuti is much better suited to the stage. I think his energy is far greater on the stage, but it's more well-rounded and it's more consistent. He builds up to it a lot better because he actually has the time to sit down, talk to the director, talk to the vocal coach, talk to the other actors, ask himself the correct questions and build on his character from there. And that's not always something that you can do in a TV and film situation. You're quite often left hanging around for hours, and then when you get up to film, it's rehearsal take, this take, that take, practice take, have some feedback from the director, but sometimes it's not all that much, and then you've just got to go and knock it out of the park as best as you can. And now I'll be clear on this. I've never said that Ncuti can't act. That's not my style. And it's not something that you will ever hear me say. I've been up there, I've done it myself. Oh my goodness, it's hard work doing this kind of job. He is consistently a million times better than what we have seen on screen. I just think he really needs the time to work on the characters and that time with everyone in order to make himself the best that he possibly can be. And I think over time, he will actually learn to work and adjust for the screen. But that takes time because the energies are different. You have to have bigger energy for the stage and smaller energy for the screen. Less is more on the screen. And hey, you know, even some of the best caliber of the stage actors never really are suited to the screen. Anyway, that's what I think. And whilst I may not have convinced you that he can act, please let me know what you think. We are allowed different opinions after all. Chat about it, don't shout about it. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Switch on the notification bells. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Bye-bye.